hard and she never know I love her to escape. Bones are thrown, sticks and stones, just to let you validate your message to
Good evening, everyone, and welcome to Away Days. We are back. And you know what? Before we get into it, and I know we've got Dave in the studio already, but I just wanted to say really quickly to all Newcastle United fans, happy 6-month takeover. 6 months today, our world and our club completely changed, and I think we've all been partying ever since. So fantastic scenes outside of St James's Park that day. We've been reminiscing in the last week of all those moments and all those feelings that we had. Funnily enough, after our last game before the takeover, which was Wolves away. It's definitely been a fantastic 6 months turnaround. And I know for a fact that there's so many Newcastle fans that are absolutely buzzing at our future and what there is lying ahead of us. But look, everyone, I hope everyone's celebrating. I hope everyone's having a good time. I hope everyone in the chat as well. We're going to get down to it, that is for sure. And of course, we've got Dave back from Talking Wolves. So Dave, how are you, my man?
Yeah, I'm good. Thank you very much for inviting me again. And yeah, I didn't know if you were going to say it, but yeah, last game under Mike Ashley was at our place. So obviously everything's changed for you guys since.
Definitely, honestly, obviously we talked on the away days beforehand, and I remember, I think me and Chris were really actually quite positive about our chances of getting something there, and it was a truly horrific performance from us. And I'll be honest, and I think most Newcastle fans in the chat, we've got loads already, will be honest and say, at that point, at sort of 5 o'clock that Saturday, nobody knew where the club was going. Well, I think we did know. I think we felt we were going to the Championship. It was that clear. It was clear as day. And the week that came after that, it just completely threw us. And it became just jubilant, really. And we've been sort of celebrating ever since, regardless of results here and there. We're just happy that our club is taken over. We've got new owners who have already been doing a fantastic job. New manager, new players. Yeah. It's a new look Newcastle United, that's for sure, and it's only going to get better. But look, we'll get down to it straight away, because this is, and we were talking just before we came on live, this is a massive game for both clubs. So, from our point of view, we've got our remit. We know our objectives. It's to stay in the Premier League. By hook or by crook, we need to stay in the Premier League in terms of the way in which our future of the club is going. But for you guys, it's very different, Dave. And from the outside looking in, we're looking at Wolves and thinking, wow, you guys have had a fantastic season. I mean, you look at the league table here, 8th in the league, 49 points. Yeah, yes, okay, played a game more, but you're right on the tails of Man United and West Ham, and 5 points behind Arsenal. And Tottenham in 4th place, and it's all to play for. But so from your perspective, with that in mind and where you are at the moment, going into the last 7 games for you in the season, how are you assessing Wolves' season so far?
It's been good. It's been very good, to be fair. I really didn't know what to expect when we'd appointed Bruno Lage at the start of the season. I think we probably spoke about it a little bit on the ahead of the reverse fixture, and I had my reservations about him, and due to his experience, really. You know, he did really, really well at Benfica, but that was all the experience that he had. But he's coming here and proved me and many others wrong. Done really, really well. I think it has been a season of almost fine margins. You saw that obviously you had the league table up there, Pete, and we were 8th in the table. And if we had beaten, we were 2-0 up against Leeds a couple of weeks ago, and we lost 3-2 in that game. So, we get the 3 points there. And look, we sat in 6th place in the table and right on the tail of the top 4. And there's been a few games like that, but, we were 1-0 up against Arsenal last month or the month before, and we took that away and lost that game. So, there's fine margins, but then I look at the reverse side. There's probably games this season that we've won that we probably shouldn't have won. So I think, it's all balanced itself out, but we're in a really strong position. And the fact that we're at this point of the season now and we're still looking towards European football is fantastic. We've still got yourselves to play. We've still got to play the likes of Brighton, Norwich, Burnley, so there's winnable games in there, but on the flip side of that, we've still got to play City, Chelsea, Liverpool again. So it's going to be an interesting end to the season for us. I think as long as we can make sure we beat or at least get results against those teams below us and maybe try and nick a point from the likes of Chelsea, well, there's definitely a chance of us maybe breaking into Europe again, which would be phenomenal.
I've got to be honest, Dave. We were doing a show that Friday night when you guys were at home to Leeds, and we were kind of rubbing our hands, going 2-0 up, it's done, and we were kind of half celebrating, thinking they're on the way down, like they're in free fall.
Yeah.
I've got to be honest, we were distraught come the end of the game when they managed to pull that back. I mean, look, just talk about it from your perspective. How did that game? Obviously, we know about the red card, but from your perspective, like, what was your feelings going into that game? Like, obviously knowing the way Leeds were playing, and how did you feel after the game?
Well, we've always had a half-decent record against Leeds, to be fair. And I thought the first 45 minutes we were so much better than them. They were very poor. And we looked dominant. We had an early injury for Neves, which obviously didn't help. Our game plan had to change quite early on in the game, but we adapted to that really quick. And the guy that actually came on for Neves was Trincao, who changed the game, really got a goal and an assist. But it was obviously the red card that changed it for me and many, many others. I think it's a very, very harsh to send Jimenez off for that incident. The only people that I've seen sort of agree with it are Leeds fans, believe it or not. So, I still think it was harsh to send him off. But when that red card came, our heads just completely went. I don't know if Bruno Lage should have probably changed the system a little bit more and just set up more defensively. But yeah, defensively, we just fell apart and that cost us the game. And yeah, frustrating. We've still got Leeds fans commenting on our stuff now, tweeting me about it 3 or 4 weeks on from the game. But yeah, from our point of view, 45 minutes gone, I thought it's 3 points in the bag. But that red card just changed the game and cost us big time.
No, it did. And I've got to be honest, it did seem really, really harsh. It was a really, really, there was all the intention there to get the ball. It wasn't a case of taking out the man. And I completely understand from a Wolves point of view. If that was us, if that was Callum Wilson, for example, or Chris Wood on the end of that, we'd have been absolutely kicking off. And we've had our fair share of really poor decisions, VAR decisions against us this season as well. So we know, how you feel from that perspective. There's no doubt. But obviously, every cloud has a silver lining. It means that Raul Jimenez is not available for the game tomorrow, which I know, speaking to other Newcastle fans, we are really, really pleased about, because we know how good Raul Jimenez is as a striker. And he will be, I imagine, a sort of a big miss for you, that's for sure. But, interesting to see. And actually, what the great thing about Wolves from our perspective is that you look like you've bounced straight back. I mean, we can look at your sort of last 3 results, really. You bounced straight back after that really disappointing defeat, and you went and beat Aston Villa, who are a good side in themselves. And you look at that run of form, 4-0 against Watford, Everton, we can't complain. You've actually helped us out recently. They're right in the thick of it fighting, and you guys have done your bit, let's say, to help us out. And obviously with Villa, it's a great result. So you're coming into this game in really, really good form. And you know, us as Newcastle fans, we know that, and we know it's going to be a really, really difficult game. But from our point of view, you know, it's going to be interesting because, and I'm sure we'll get into some stats in a bit, is that we don't tend to, you know, concede loads of goals against each other. It's not a goal fest. It's always quite a tight game. So I think the tactical situation, and we'll come into that later on in the show as well, will be really, really interesting. But just want to say lots in the chat, lots showing their love and support. And you know, first and foremost, Gary, and a happy birthday to Loaded Mag. This is our birthday week, so we have been celebrating from a Loaded Mag point of view. If you miss the shows this week, a fantastic show with Pete Graves, Sky Sports presenter. Really, really good to have him join Loaded and the team. And then last night we had the Happy Birthday Loaded Bash, where we had some guests joining us in the studio, sharing their sort of experiences and support that they've had whilst coming onto the show, Loaded with us all. And just to say, everyone in the chat, there's a few questions flying about already. If you've got questions for myself or Dave, get them in. I'm starring them. We'll come back to them as the show progresses. So don't worry about that. And there's been some good questions already. And in fact, let's go. Let's go to an early question, and it's from Martin. Loaded member of the channel, good guy. He's put, Pete, can you ask him which Wolves player of past would you love in the current team? So interesting one.
Yeah, that's a good question. I think we need a bit of a goal scorer. I mean, I'm a little bit too young to have been able to see Steve Bull live.
Yeah.
And that's somebody that I would have loved to have seen live. So I think somebody like him in this current squad, he never played in the Premier League really, or the top division at the time either. So it would have been interesting to see him in modern day football and up front for Wolves, because we could do with a better source of goals. I think we are struggling a little bit. So yeah, probably someone like Steve Bull would be quite good.
Definitely. And I think, if I'm right in thinking, it might be, is it Jimenez that's your top scorer? I think he's scored like five or six goals.
6 goals, yeah. So I think Jimenez and then Hwang Ki-chan is probably not far behind. But yeah, it's not so bad. I mean, it's picked up in recent weeks, like you saw with the results that you popped up earlier. You know, he started to score a couple more goals, but it's been shared around a lot more. But I think we still, we are missing, Jimenez before his injury was scoring like 15 plus league goals for us in the first couple of years. Obviously, we really struggled on that front last year, and it's sort of been the same this year. But we've got plenty of players chipping in. Neves and Matinho. The defenders are scoring a lot more goals this year as well. And obviously, the wingers getting more involved. So it has been shared out a little bit more, which is good.
Yeah, definitely. And there's definitely been some support in the chat. It was never a second yellow. So we're not biased from that point of view. We're football fans. We know the score, and like I said, we've been on the receiving end of that. That's for sure over the last 4 or 5 months, I would say. But let's get down to it now. Obviously, you've been flying up the table. You're having a great season. And I'll talk from my observations is that actually you've not conceded a lot of goals, and to be fair, you've kept a clean sheet. One of the big changes for you in the season was obviously Rui Patricio moving on and leaving Wolves, but this guy has come in, Sarr. What do you make of him as a goalkeeper coming in? And did you expect him to be as good as what, in my opinion, I think he's been this season in the Premier League?
Yeah, he's been fantastic. And I don't think many Wolves fans expected him to be as good as he has been. I didn't want to write him off because, I've been aware of Sarr. I'm not going to say I was an avid watcher of him. I've been aware of Sarr from when he was in Portugal, and obviously he's been playing for Olympiacos in Greece before he moved to Wolves. So when Patricio was linked to the move away, I was a little bit disappointed because I was a big Patricio fan. But one of the biggest observations Wolves fans had was that obviously Patricio has been the Portugal #1 for years. And Jose Sarr, this guy that we were about to sign, can't even get into the Portugal team. So that's what a lot of people were disappointed about. But he's coming in and been phenomenal. And I think this is an incredible season for him. Like you mentioned, he's getting a lot of clean sheets. And if you're into the sort of more stats side of things, if you look at our expected goals against compared to our actual goals conceded, it's ridiculous how well he's done. I think we've got the 4th best defensive record in the league. When you look at goals scored, we're down towards the bottom. I think it's probably 4th or 5th best in terms of goals scored. But we're doing really well. You know, most games are fairly low scoring, but you know, we've got a knack of, if we're getting that first goal, we're making it incredibly difficult for teams to get back into the game. And yeah, he's been fantastic. Even against Villa, you know, he has got this almost eccentric side where he can come off his line a little bit more. And he has made 1 or 2 mistakes. I'm not going to say it's been an absolutely perfect season for him. But my word, he's kept us in some games this season. And yeah, a really, really strong season of him. Really happy with how he's getting on.
Yeah, definitely. And you know what? It's a mark of a good team when your goalkeeper is playing really, really well and you're picking up clean sheets. And like you've said, you've been really, really hard to beat. When you take the lead, you tend to keep that lead, or at the very least, you'll take some form of points. And actually, you haven't had many draws this season. It's actually been almost kind of you either win or you lose, but you've won more than you've lost. Because you know what was interesting, I was looking at the league table, and actually you've only lost 1 less game than us this season. Which, when I looked at the table, I was a bit like, I was really shocked by that. I was really surprised, because I'll be honest, I wasn't expecting it with the season that you've had. But you know, looking at the table, I'll go for it now. I'm just looking in now. So you've lost 12 games and we've lost 13. And you know, I don't think anyone would have expected that with the season that we've had. But you know, it just goes to show that you have been picking up points in the right areas. And when you've been picking them up, there have been 3 points that have been massive, in terms of what you've been doing in terms of the team. I'll come to just 1 or 2 individual players, because you know, this player was a player that we were linked with in January, even before January, and he was quite favourable to us, and it's Conor Coady, your captain. And you know, I think it was around maybe end of November, early December, that I think in an interview he talked about St James's Park as being one of those sort of favourite stadiums that he likes to play in. And I think Newcastle fans and people in general took that as that it's a done deal, and you know, and where is he going to sign? And we were quite excited about that being a potential, because we know how good he is as a centre back. He's an England centre back. He's a captain and a leader, and we were at that point certainly lacking leaders in our team. But what just you know, how good is Conor Coady from your perspective, and what does he give to your team?
Well, it's interesting, because if you asked me this question this time last year, I think a lot of Wolves fans would say, you know, and Newcastle were rumoured with him this time last year. I think a lot of Wolves fans would say, yeah, have him, you know. But this year under Bruno Lage, he's really kicked on, and I actually think he's been. Not many Wolves fans talk about him, but I think he's been very, very good this year, and you know, deserves his place in the England squad. I think it'd be difficult for me to say, you know, yes, get him as a top Premier League centre back, because I think in a back 4, I think he would struggle. I think this back 5 system that obviously Nuno brought him into as like a sweeper in the middle of a back 3 is perfect for him. And that's why, you know, long term Wolves do want to switch to a back 4, and that. Just part of me can't see where Conor Coady would fit into that long term, but he's our longest serving player. He's been at the club for years, and he's been brilliant, mate. He really has. He's a really top player, top professional. You know, speaks well, great leader. And I would be interested, you know, if a team like Newcastle came in, I would be interested to see what sort of bids or what sort of price Wolves would value him at, because I just don't know. I think it's hard to put a value on a player like him, but he's been very good for us this year. I think he's really kicked on, and I think arguably his best season in a Wolves shirt so far.
Yeah, he looks like, I'll be honest, the outside looking in, looks like he's got better. Like you've just said, you just said from your perspective that it's the best season you think that he's had at Wolves, and it looks it, to be honest. He looks really, really strong in the way in which he's playing, which is, you know, fantastic for you guys, and it's clear that it's having a real impact. But obviously, you know, Jordan Mick said that you're going to be happy when Coady joins us in August. From your perspective, do you think he'll be leaving anytime soon, or do you think he's at Wolves for the long haul?
It's very difficult to say. Like I said earlier, I think if Wolves switch to a back four, I think he will struggle to stay in the Wolves team. But I think his leadership and his presence is invaluable. Really, I can't see him leaving. If I'm honest, I can't see him leaving. But who knows? It's football, isn't it? Anything can happen.
Yeah, definitely. Anything can happen. We've seen that with many players in the years gone by. But sorry to stay on the sort of the potential transfer talk with players in your team, but you've got an exceptional player that again is missing, probably missing a huge chunk of the season now, who's been linked massively with other clubs, and it kind of actually links into a question that has popped up really. And I'll just find it. It's from Mad Mark. But question to Dave: both Man United and Arsenal have been linked this summer with a move for Ruben Neves. Are Wolves fans worried that this could be the window that sees such a pivotal player leave you? Obviously in that summer break, and obviously we're talking about Ruben Neves in particular. What are your thoughts on Mad Mark's question, and just how important is Ruben Neves been to you this season?
Yeah, he's another one a little bit like Coady. He's really kicked on. I think last year we weren't great under Nuno. I think he played quite negatively, held a lot of players, in particular Neves, back, and he's had sort of almost a free roam under Bruno Lage's season. He's been able to break forward a lot more, just looks a lot more comfortable on the ball, more confident. But I think one of the main issues here is in the summer, he's only got 2 years left on his deal at Wolves, and we've had an issue with Adama Traore this year where he's refused to sign his contract, and we've sort of, as a club, we've let it slip, and now he's in the last 12 months of his deal. So the club don't want that to happen again to Ruben Neves. If he doesn't want to stay at the club, this summer is the best time to sell him to get as much money as we can for him. As soon as it goes past this summer, I think that's when his value starts to dwindle quite quickly. It's reported that we've started contract talks with him. I would 100% love for him to obviously stay at the club. But obviously these stories doing the rounds do worry me a little bit. You got Manchester United, you got Arsenal, which I don't think he'd join a team if they were in the Europa League. But at the same time, I know as football fans, we can look at United and we know they're not the team that they used to be, but it's still Manchester United. You know what I mean? He's been linked with Barcelona as well. So I don't know, but Bruno Lage has come out today and been asked about it, and he says that he knows clubs have got £100 million to spend. Now, I don't know if that's him saying he values it Neves at £100 million. I've spoke to a couple of Wolves fans, and they would take sort of the £60 million mark, but I think to the club he's worth a lot more, and he's had a family here. He's had 3 kids whilst he's been here. He's younger than me and got 3 kids, and he obviously him and his wife are settled here, so. I think long term, if he stays, he'll be the man that takes over the captaincy off Coady long term. I just hope that the club just shows that little bit of ambition and just says to him, look, we'll give you a new contract, give us another year, let us invest in the squad in the summer, and if it's not what you want it to be this time next year, then we'll let you go. But it'll be interesting this summer. I think it'll be full of rumours, but I just sort of hope the club or some sort of senior journalist can just put the rumours to bed right at the start of the summer, so we don't have to worry about it.
Yeah, definitely, and that's it. The rumours are never good, but he is a supremely talented player. How old is he now?
He's 25 now.
25. Wow, feels like he's been around for so long because you guys you plucked him from Porto, if I think I'm right, at a really, really young age when you were in the Championship, and it does feel like he's been around for so long, but still only 25 years old. He's got so much left. So whether one or two might have kind of raised their eyebrows when you said 60 million, with his age and what he's already done, and he's a regular.
He's got 4 years of Premier League experience under his belt as well. Like that's invaluable, really. So I know it's hard to compare them. A lot of people are comparing him to the likes of Calvin Phillips or Declan Rice. It's hard because obviously they've got that English, that English tax that we call it. But on paper, he is as good as these players. You know what I mean? So I think 60 million is a very fair price. But I don't know if with Bruno Lage's comments, I'm not sure if he's expecting more.
Yeah, no. Look, personally, I think he's better than Declan Rice. I think he's better than Calvin Phillips. But like you said, that English tax will always mean that those players move on for a lot more.
Yeah.
Waving the Portugal flag will always affect that price. But yeah, that'll be an interesting one. Because obviously he has been really, really important to you. But as we've talked about before, he will be missing the game tomorrow night. If I'm right in thinking, he got injured. Was it against Aston Villa?
It was against Leeds, so he missed. Yeah, so he missed the game against Villa, as did Jimenez. And that's why we actually did quite well against Villa. I thought we'd really, really struggle, and with the players that came in, we had. I'm sure we'll talk about it a bit more after. We had Dendoncker come in for Matinho and Fabio Silva come in for Jimenez, and we looked really, really good. And it's happened quite a few times. We had Semedo, the right back. He's only just come back from injury, and when he got injured last month, it was all doom and gloom, and we coped really well without him. So I think we have now just picked up I would say when everyone's fit, this is our strongest squad we've ever had. For a long, long time. So we're in a good place. But yeah, Neves, they reckon he's going to be back start of May. So probably still another few games without him. So he is a big loss, but we have got obviously different players that can replace him.
Definitely. So that'll be one to watch, that's for sure. And look, we'll switch slightly now onto Newcastle, because we've had our own sort of transfer links with particular players, and there was lots of talk today in the Newcastle presser, and the local journalists were quite clear, because there's been a lot of links in the last week that Alain Saint-Maximin is potentially going to be moving on in the summer, and the club were looking for looking to move him on, and looking for a fee for him to kind of let him leave the club. There's been a lot of question marks, David. I'm not sure if you've been aware. There's been a lot of question marks with regards to Alain Saint-Maximin, how hard he works, whether he's committed to the club, whether he's the person that is needed to take this team forward the way in which you want him to be taken forward. But the positive thing from today is Eddie Howe has come out and said Alain Saint-Maximin's staying. He's got no intentions of selling him, and he actually is really, really pleased with what he's producing, and just showed absolute full support for Alain Saint-Maximin. So from our perspective, I think it's great news. A player like Alain Saint-Maximin, who's a very, very special player, particularly on his day, is going to stay at Newcastle United. But also, I think from our perspective, the fact that the manager, Eddie Howe, has come out and just squashed those rumours before they started to build is a sign of a good manager. But also, he's nipped that in the bud quite early on, so the media don't kind of whip it up into a little bit of a frenzy.
I saw that he was linked with Wolves as well this week. I think there was quite an old rumour linking him with Wolves, and I saw that was brought back this week. And I've had a couple of discussions about it with Newcastle fans like yourself. Spoke to one or two of us this week, and it sounds like he's a little bit too similar to obviously the likes of Adama Traore. In terms of on the ball, he's phenomenal. He gets people off their seat, but just that end product isn't quite there at the moment. And the work rate off the ball sometimes can be a little bit questionable. So I don't know. Again, it's something that this time last year, if you asked me about it, I probably would have considered it. But I think with the way Bruno Lage almost wants to take his team, I don't think those, and I'm not saying he's a bad player, so Maximin, but I don't think those sort of players would work with the way that Wolves want to play long term. So again, it didn't come from a hugely reputable source anyway. But yeah, like you said, it's always good when a manager comes out and tries to get rid of those rumours straight away.
Definitely. And yeah, I mean, from our perspective, it is great news. There's no messing around, and that's exactly what we needed as a club to kind of dispel those sort of concerns, because that can start to eat into a player. A player, if it's not been confirmed, it can start to play on their mind. It can affect their performances. And look, we need Alice at maximum playing. He's had a little bit of an injury, a little bit of illness. Since he's come back, he hasn't quite hit the heights. But then again, we've had 4 away games in a row, which is always tough. Some of them over a real short period of time. And, this is our first game back tomorrow night at St James's Park, so we are really, really looking forward to that. That's for sure. But just to jump in, a quick question from Tom Dixon said, "Do you miss Diego Jota or not?" Obviously, he moved on to Liverpool and is getting rave reviews. But from your perspective, do you guys miss him?
With the way he's playing now, yes, definitely. But obviously at the time, he'd had a huge drop in form, and he'd actually turned out, at the end of that season, he ended up being our 4th choice winger. So I think at the time it was the right time to sell him. I think for him, he was our 4th choice winger. I thought the fee we got for him was okay, and it was a good deal for both clubs because I think Wolves fans knew what his ceiling could be, but just at Wolves he wasn't producing enough. But obviously he's gone to Liverpool and been phenomenal with the players that are around him, the service he's getting, but he's putting most chances into the back of the net. So I think a lot of Wolves fans are happy for him. I think we're doing well. He's doing well, but yeah, we could do with a player like him right now. Him on the left hand side would definitely be quite promising to see. And yeah, I would love to see him back. I would love to see him back at Wolves, but I think with the way he's going at Liverpool right now, his value's skyrocketing.
Definitely, and apologies for that. I clicked leave the studio by accident. I was trying to flick over to the comments.
Well, I had to turn into the presenter then.
Yeah, you really did. That was interesting, but yeah, apologies for that. But yeah, the way he's playing right now, the price that he left you guys is probably doubled now, and he's going on to bigger and better things. And ultimately, whether you mention this or not, he looks like he's going to be potentially Firmino's replacement, really, as he starts to, in some ways, play more than Firmino is. It wouldn't surprise me if Firmino does move on for a significant fee in the summer, because they seem like they've got the replacements for him. But he's certainly doing well. But interestingly, you have obviously gone away and worked on your team, worked on 1 or 2 players, and you've got 1 or 2 players that are coming in and doing a really good job. What I'm interested to find out is, in particular, what your thoughts are on this man, Podence. He, for me, is really a special player that's not even hit the heights yet. But he's kind of come in as a replacement. I remember when Jota was in the team, and he was maybe coming off the bench and playing a little bit here and there, and not really a regular. But he started to become a regular this season for you, and he seems to be really, really doing the business. But what do the Wolves fans think of him?
Yeah, I think last year was his first full season at Wolves, and the issue with Podence was that he just lacked consistency in terms of obviously performances, but also fitness as well. He just kept having a lot of small injuries, which just broke up his game time in the team. Yeah. But this year he's really kicked on, been pretty much injury free, stayed in and around the side, had really, really good spells. And I think he's just got to start putting, getting more goals and assists, basically. He's such a threat. He creates moves, he starts moves, but he's still that little bit hesitant in front of goal. He's not ruthless enough, and that's what Wolves need him to be. But you look at, obviously, our goal against Villa. It started with Martino pinging the ball out to him, and Podence just hesitated a little bit, but he got the ball in the right areas and the right positions, and obviously we ended up scoring off the rebound. So he's been phenomenal on the ball. He's brilliant, drives the ball forward, beats his man comfortably, winds up opponents, which, sometimes in our opinion can be a bit frustrating, but even more so for the opposition as well. But yeah, he's a good player, and I'm glad that he's had this season where he's been really consistent, because there's been a lot of players in and around him. Trincao, obviously Neto's come back from injury, Hwang Hee-chan, but Podence has pretty much kept his place all throughout the season.
Yeah, you know what? I don't know whether people in the chat and whether you, Dave, feel the same, but when I watch Podence, he kind of reminds me a little bit of Eden Hazard. He has that kind of look about him. He's like quite small, stocky player, has a real low sense of gravity, but he can just turn on a sixpence and just glide with the ball. He makes it look so easy. I remember seeing him, when he first really came into the team. And, I remember looking and thinking, like, he just plays just like Hazard. And watching him even more so, he seems to play the same way. And you're just thinking, if you can get maybe 70% of what Hazard produces, you've got a super talent on your hands. But he's definitely going to be one. And I'm sure when we look at the team sheet, he'll be on it later on in the show. But he's one to look at. But an interesting one here that obviously came in, I think it was this summer. Correct me if I'm wrong, but it's Trincao, and obviously he's come in. Is it a loan deal, or did you get him permanently?
Yeah, it's on loan from Barcelona with an option to buy. So that one's been a bit interesting because obviously we've had him on loan. I was really excited because again he is somebody that I was aware of before he went to Barcelona. He was at Braga and a really good talent. Went to Barca last year, had a handful of games. Obviously he was competing with Mr. Messi last season, but and I was really excited. But to be honest, he's had I don't want to say poor season, but he hasn't been great for us up until the last few weeks where he's really kicked on and all of a sudden looks like he's playing with a lot of confidence. Was really good against Leeds and I thought he had a really good performance against Villa as well. Again, he's somebody a little bit, like I said, with Podence, just needs to be a little bit more confident in front of goal, pull the trigger a little bit earlier, have faith in what you're trying to do. But against Villa, he just looked a lot more confident on the ball. And there's talks that Barca, instead of paying money for Adama Traore, just going to do a straight swap with Trincao. And this time last month, most Wolves fans were saying no chance. But he's really picked up in form. Last 2 games he's been really good, and I think people are just leaning towards thinking maybe that's going to be a good deal for the club.
Yeah, definitely. He does seem to have really kicked on. I was interested in seeing myself, and I just thought, it was a little bit concerning that he had dropped off. But like you said, he has picked up. So interesting to see how he takes sort of his career on after that point. But we'll go into a little bit of team news. Obviously, we talked about from Eddie Howe's perspective. He's mentioned that Alan Saint-Maximin, he's not going anywhere. He's staying at the club, and obviously he wants to build in and around him. There's question marks about Joe Willock. He's been playing with a bit of a knee injury in the last few weeks. Eddie Howe confirmed, and there's question marks about whether Joe Willock will play. He's actually said he's going to make a late decision on Joe Willock. And to be fair, at the game against Tottenham, he didn't look at his all action best. He looked like he was maybe carrying something. It was a little bit of a concern. He definitely wasn't at the level that we expected. Neither was Joe Linton, but Joe Linton seems to have trained and seems to be okay, ready for the game. And it looks like that, Fabian Schär is shaken off his injury and he should be okay for that. Still question marks about Kieran Trippier. Not ready for tomorrow, unfortunately, and he'll miss the Leicester game the following week. But I think what it seems is that they're looking at targeting the midweek game after Leicester against either Palace or the following Saturday against Norwich. So it's looking like, in the next couple of weeks, we're going to have, finally, we'll have Kieran Trippier back in the team. But it'll be interesting to see from our perspective how things go. And then additionally, Miggy is back after a bout of illness. He's back in the team and ready to go. So it'd be interesting to see what selections are made, certainly if Willock is unavailable. So we'll wait and see on that. But from a Wolves perspective, I don't know if you listened to the press conference, whether it was today. Has there been any news come out of Wolves with regards to any of your squad? I think we talked about the fact that obviously Jimenez is suspended and not available. You've got Neves that's injured and not available. Are there any others from your point of view that may be touch and go or just returning?
Yeah, so Semedo, like I mentioned earlier, he's just come back from an injury. I think he was on the bench last week, but he's been training, so he is back in contention. But Johnny, who sort of took his place, has been really good and scored 2 and 2 from right wing back. So I wouldn't be surprised to see Semedo not even start tomorrow. But yeah, the main ones really are those that you've mentioned. Jimenez obviously suspended and Neves injured, but other than that, out of the key first team players, everyone else is pretty much available.
Okay, disappointing for us to hear that news. We always look at on away days. We're always kind of like waiting with bated breath that we're hearing the news that maybe a key player or two are out. And to be fair, Jimenez and Neves are really key players, but there can never be too many key players that are missing the game. So we'll hope that the boys, certainly from a Newcastle perspective, can be ready to go. But just from your perspective, obviously, I don't think you've won in the. Oh yeah, sorry, you have won. You won one in the Premier League since you came up from the Championship, and it was a really late goal that you scored right sort of at the beginning. I think it's your first season. Can't remember who scored it for the life of me now.
Matt
It might have
Doherty
been
was the late
Doherty,
one.
yeah, really late on in the game, and won that game. But the Wolves fans, did they ever worry about coming to St James's Park? What are the thoughts about whenever you guys have to make the trip to St James's Park?
I think we know it's always going to be a tight game. You mentioned right at the start of the show, it's never a game where one team runs away with it. And I think this is pretty much the 1-1 derby. I think, other than that one win, I think all the other games have been 1-1 off the top of my head. I think it's a bit of a running joke now, isn't it? And but if ignoring this season, obviously where we got the tight win, but it's normally, like you said, very tight games. So it is going to be a tough game. I know you guys. It'll be, I think, go one or two ways for you guys. You picked up a really nice bit of form. You've lost the last three, but I would argue two of those are against really tough teams.
Yeah.
But obviously the most recent one was the heavy defeat. So it could go two ways. It could have really knocked you, or at the same time you'll be wanting to bounce back. So I think it's going to be a tough game, regardless. St James's Park. I've been there. I think I went back when we were both in the Championship. We actually beat you. You won like 6-0 on the Tuesday, top of the league, and I was like, oh no, we turned you over, beat you 2-0. But yeah, it's a lovely ground. It's a tough place to go, and I think it'll be a really tight game.
Yeah, definitely. They've always been quite tight games. Even like the game that you won, it was a last-minute sort of counter attack, sort of like a two. I think it was 2 or 3 on 2 or 2-on-1 situation where Doherty scored at the back post. They've always been really, really tight games. No matter how good of a season, you've had great seasons before and still found it difficult against Newcastle. Even our worst moment, I would say, we're probably at our best moment now for the last few years. So it's going to be a really, really interesting game, that's for sure. But look, I think around this time is a great time to get some stats, and there's only one man around to bring some stats for Newcastle United against Wolves, and it's this man.
Evening, lads.
Good evening, Keith. How you doing?
Really good, thank you. Hope you're both well.
Yeah, all good, thank you, man.
Yeah, very good. Great to have you on, Keith. I know you were on the birthday special last night, but obviously a regular on away days, our 00 Stato, and I hear you've got some good stats to throw at us about this Newcastle Wolves fixture.
Yeah, I've mined and I've found a load of stats tonight. So I'm going to take you through some stats, head-to-head stats. I'm going to take you through some Newcastle stats and a little bit on Wolves form as well. So Newcastle's all-time record in this fixture against Wolves It's slightly weighted towards Wolves, has to be said. They've played 102 games, won 32. They've drawn 28 and they've lost 42 against Wolves. So Wolves have got the advantage there in history. Newcastle also have only won 2 of their last 11 against Wolves. So 2 wins, 6 draws, 3 defeats. Newcastle's Premier League record against Wolves as well. I know you've touched on the draw factor there, both there just earlier. They've played 6, they've won 1, and they've drawn 4 and they've lost 1 at St James's Park. So, could be another draw on this one, but Newcastle are winless in the last 5 home games against Wolves, drawn 3 and lost 2 in the top flight. The last home win against Wolves was a 4-1 win in the Premier League, believe it or not, in April 2011. Goals from Kevin Nolan, Shola Miobi, Peter Lorenkratz, and Jonas Gutierrez. So cast your mind back. Anything like that would be happy with tomorrow night. But if Wolves win tomorrow night at St James's Park, it'll be the first time they've done the double over Newcastle since the 1991-92 season in the old second division. And if tomorrow night in the top flight, you've got to go back to 1953-54, when the last time that Wolves did beat Newcastle in top flight twice. Wolves' last league win against Newcastle at St James's Park, you've just touched on it there before, November 2008. The late goal, winning 2-1, and Wolves getting the winners with Diego Jota and Matt Doherty. Now these ones worry me. Wolves' form here, head-to-head. Wolves have earned 23 Premier League points this calendar year. Now that's second only to Liverpool in the Premier League. And Liverpool have got 31, so Wolves are in absolutely brilliant form there in the top 6. Wolves have already won 8 times away from home in the Premier League this season. The best run in the top flight, the old first division, got to go back to 79-80 season, where they won 10. So they look on course to do that this season with the remaining games. Newcastle, this one worries me, are winless in all 14 games against teams in the top of the table when they've played them. They've drawn 3 and they've lost 11. I'm going to bring it back now. Jamal Lascelles has scored twice against Wolves in the last 5 games. So maybe bring Lascelles back tomorrow night, if only off the bench for a late goal. If it's 1-0 or something and we need a goal. Eddie Howe's managerial stats. He's managed 6 games. He's won 2. He's drawn 1. He's lost 3 against Wolves. So averaging about over a point against Wolves. And Eddie Howe is looking to achieve 4 home wins in the Premier League in a row tomorrow for the first time as a manager. And if he does that, Newcastle could win 4 home games in a row for the first time since March 2019 under Rafa, where they won 5 games from January to March. Also, if Newcastle win tomorrow, it'll be their 250th Premier League win tomorrow night at St James's Park.
Wow.
However, Wolves tomorrow night, if they win, they're going to equal their record of 16 Premier League wins, which they achieved in 2018-19. So I think whatever happens from now until the end of the season, Wolves are on course to have the best Premier League season. Wow. And that is it for the stats.
What do you make of that, Dave? Some great stats for you.
I was going to say a lot in our favour, I think. So, yeah, but there are some that I'm hoping it's going to be quite tight. I know you said there we might break our all-time Premier League record. I think, like I said right at the start, as long as we can make sure we get points against the teams that we're playing that are below us, I think we've got a great chance of doing that. But same with the away wins. We've had a really good form away from home. So, yeah, a lot of those stats bode well for us ahead of tomorrow.
Definitely. And I had a feeling some of those stats would favour you. Obviously, looking at some of the previous results and some of the results in history gone by, you've done well against us. That's for sure. So it'll be interesting. But look, we need that win. We need that win. We're desperate for that win. Certainly at St. James's Park, we're back at home after 4 away games. We need the crowd to be buzzing. We need War Flags to do their part, really make it a spectacle to make sure the players are up for this game. No game's easy from a Newcastle perspective, and we need points on the board. I would say, we'll get into it in a second, but a couple of wins takes us on to 37 points, and I think 37 points keeps us in the Premier League this season. So this would take us a huge step, a huge stride forward to get that and keep our Premier League status for another year. So be really, really interesting how that works out. But moving on to this stage, we talked about it before, and I know you mentioned it earlier on, Dave. And we're going to go to the lineups now. And as always, the last number of weeks, I've always asked our guests to come up with their predicted 11 for their team. And Dave, this is your team, so I'll pop it up and then just talk us through, why you picked certain players. I know there's been question marks that you've talked about in the show tonight about one or two, but just maybe share with us why you picked that team the way you have. So here we are.
Yeah, so that is actually the exact same 11 that we started with against Villa, and I think I wouldn't be surprised to see Bruno Lage go unchanged because of how well we did against Villa. Played really, really well. There are still some players that are itching to get back into the first team. But I think as long as everyone is sharp and fit enough, we were meant to be playing Man City next weekend, but because of the FA Cup, we haven't got a game. So we haven't got a game for 2 weeks after this. So I think, fitness isn't really an issue. Rotation shouldn't be an issue. And I would just stick with this team. Obviously, Sarr, who we've mentioned quite a lot. Kilman, Coady, Bolly. I think it's the first time those three have played together in the league this season against Villa. And they were great. So I would keep that. Marcel, who gets a lot of hate by Wolves fans, but I thought he was really solid again against Villa. He was the one that whipped in the ball for Ashley Young to head into his own net. It was a great cross. Johnny, like I said earlier, scored 2 and 2 now, keeping Semedo out of the team. Martino Dendoncker is a cert. I can't see, unless we go 3 in the middle. I mean, those two will definitely start. And the front three, I would keep, like I said, they look threatening, they look lively. Pedence, Silva and Trincao. Maybe Neto could come in for one of those, possibly Trincao, because I think Pedence will start. Or maybe even Hwang Hee-chan, who obviously scored twice against Newcastle in the reverse fixture. But I think it's going to be very, very close to that lineup, Pete, just based on how well we did against the Villa.
Yeah, it was interesting to see that Neto wasn't in your starting lineup, and he hasn't really started as many games as what I thought he would. Is he just lacking in form, or is it just that other players are playing better than him at the moment?
So he's only just come back from a long-term injury. So I think it's one of those, you see it so often where a player gets chucked straight back into the team and it can just, cause issues again. So I think that he's just slowly trying to bed him in. I don't think he's going to rush to get him into the starting lineup. Whenever he comes on the pitch, in these small cameos he's having, he looks good. He looks like a really positive player. So I might be wrong. I think this sort of game might well suit him, especially as we're away from home. I think Trincao is the sort of player that struggles away from home. So I think Pedence, Neto and Silva would be something I'd love to see because they're just 3, adventurous attacking players. So I'd like to see that. I wouldn't rule that out. But yeah, it's just a case, I think, of just slowly trying to bed him into the squad rather than just chucking him in for the sake of it.
What about Willy Bolly? Because a couple of years ago, he was a monster for you guys. He really, really, arguably, probably your best centre back. I know he's had a few injuries recently, and he's not long come back from one. But how's he faring for you now? He's back in the team.
Yeah, again, he's another one that it may well be 50-50. I would keep him in just because of how good he was against Villa. Again, he's another one that's just had I haven't really publicised it too much, but he has a really strange run of injuries. I think at the end of last season, he got COVID, which turned into long COVID, and he's really, really struggled to regain his fitness. He had one appearance right at the start of the season, but up until this year, I don't think he appeared in any Premier League games. He was really, he did well against Leeds, although obviously we lost that game. But he's come back in and he did really well against Watford, I believe. So, I would keep him in the squad. I think he probably around Christmas, I would have thought that he might well have been sold in January. I did hear a rumour and a whisper that Newcastle were looking at him. I don't know how true that was or is, and whether it was just somebody that I know of just linking Newcastle to every other Premier League defender, like I think was happening. But he's come back in and been brilliant. And like you said, he was our best Premier League defender. So I think he deserves another chance in the team, and he's been pretty solid whenever he's been given a chance.
Right, interesting. A question from Tom Dixon here. He said, what will Wolves' main threat be to Newcastle? So where do you think their biggest threat will be tomorrow night?
I think it's all over the pitch, as mad as it sounds, because you got this formation is so, so interesting because you can have that threat from down the wings. I think that is the wide areas is going to probably be where the game is won or lost, because we've got obviously Marcel and Johnny and Pedence and Trincao. But both of our goals actually started from the middle, really, with Moutinho picking up the ball, and then he found the pass which led to the goal. So I think Newcastle have got to be aware. Villa did not put enough pressure on Moutinho whatsoever and gave him a lot of time on the ball. I think if Newcastle can press him quite hard and make it difficult for him to play with the ball, it could be a positive afternoon or positive evening for Newcastle. But I think the fact that Moutinho had so much time on the ball against Villa, he could just, run the game basically. And like I said, both of our goals started from Moutinho. So we've got good quality all over the pitch, but I think that the front three is going to be really intriguing. A lot of Wolves fans have got faith in those front three that I've selected there, especially after the cameos against Villa. So I'm hoping that they're going to be a little bit more ruthless in front of goal, and we can see them score some goals.
Definitely. Definitely one to look out for. Keith, have you spotted anything in that Wolves team that maybe worries you, that maybe you think could be a weakness as well?
I think in the last few games, for Wolves in particular, despite the fact that Jimenez has not not in there, has been the attacking threat across the park. There seems to have been a good goal distribution right across the team. Particularly the midfield looks strong for me. Yeah. Touching on Johnny there too in the last couple of games. Dendonka, he's netted a few as well. Podence as well, pretty much Wolves' top scorer after that. And Conor Coady, top player. He's a player that's impressed over the last few seasons. So and you've just touched on there earlier, Bolly. It's a strong team that, hard to break down tomorrow. And Newcastle, they're going to have to dig in and get some of that form that they got just in that led up to pretty much the first half of the Chelsea game, really, to get going, to grind a result out against Wolves tomorrow night.
Definitely. It is not going to be an easy game, that's for sure. And yeah, as you've said, they've got strength in numbers. There are lots of players in that Wolves team that are playing really, really well, and rightly so. They're flying in the league, and obviously, it's from our point of view, Dave. Obviously, as Newcastle fans, we're looking at Wolves and we're looking at you guys pushing that top 8 and those top teams and really kind of giving them a run for their money, a little bit like what West Ham did last season and have continued doing so. And that's sort of the trajectory that we see ourselves in the next few years going on. Obviously, we've got a little bit to do. We've got to change the squad around. There's some players that need moving on. The club needs to be revamped somewhat, but we look at you guys and we think, that's where we would like to be. So the fact that you're doing it and you're asking those questions of the top teams, and only a couple of points behind the likes of Man United, West Ham, Arsenal, Tottenham is fantastic. And what it does, I think, more than anything, it gives us a little bit of hope that teams can come in and really kind of cause some problems with this particular supposed top 6 type team. But I just wanted to bring onto the screen here because I've done my own team. I wanted to talk a little bit of tactics, so I just thought I'd bring it up. Can everyone see that okay?
Yeah.
So this is my team, a slightly different team to Friday. only really one change, and it's this man, Sean Longstaff. Obviously, with the question marks about Willock, there's an opportunity to bring another midfielder in. And Longstaff played really well against Chelsea and was kind of unlucky to lose his place against Everton a few days afterwards. And I think if there's question marks about Willock, maybe not to risk him, because we've got someone that's chomping at the bit in Sean Longstaff, ready to come in and prove himself. And the one thing is that I think at the moment Eddie Howe is looking at players and saying, right, what are you showing me? Are you someone we can take forward in the future to be in a position to take Newcastle United to where we want to be? And you know, Sean Longstaff needs to prove himself. His contract's out in the summer. He's a local lad, and what a opportunity to prove himself against a flying Wolves team. But I'll go through the team. We've got Dubravka in goal. He's that good. I didn't even put his name in there. He's a guaranteed starter, just like Sarr over here. But yeah, I've stuck with Burn and Shaw. I'll be honest, they weren't good against Tottenham. It was a little bit out of character for both. I'm sure Keith would agree with that. But they have been, in my opinion, and I'm sure a lot of Newcastle fans' opinion, the best centre-back pairing that we've had this season. And I think, you know, it's going to take something massive to dislodge these two as a pair. You know, they're comfortable on the ball, going left and right. Shaw, very, very good. And you know, it was actually quite interesting because one of our other loaded lads, Rich Story, mentioned in the chat about the fact that, you know, you yourself, Dave, talked about Coady earlier, and I think you mentioned that, you know, he's a centre back that can't play in a four.
Yeah,
we had the same mindset, and we had the same opinion of Fabian Shaw. We were adamant for years that he couldn't play in a back four because he was effectively bought by Rafa Benitez to play in a back three. And whenever we did play in the back four, he didn't really play very well there. And certainly post Rafa Benitez under Steve Bruce, he really, really wasn't good at all. But Eddie Howe's come in and given him an opportunity to play in the back four, and he really seems to have been thriving under that responsibility of playing in that back four and playing really, really well. So, you know, I think it'd be difficult to dislodge that back four. You got Matty Target at left back, and I've gone with Manquillo, and this for me, and I don't know what your thoughts on this, Keith. This for me was a difficult choice. Now, we all know our opinions on Emil Kraft, and you know, lots of Newcastle fans, in fact, the majority, don't really rate him. But actually, he's been playing really well recently, and
he's been in good form. Yeah,
he has been, and it was maybe a little bit unlucky that he found himself out of the team. He was on obviously in international duty with Sweden, but Manquillo didn't really play well at the Tottenham Hotspur Stadium, obviously against a really good team. And so I've gone with Manquillo just because I think, you know, side by side, Manquillo for me is probably a slightly better right back, but maybe not slightly, a much better right back. But there could be an argument, and I wouldn't be surprised if Kraft starts tomorrow night. It wouldn't surprise me.
Sorry, Pete, do you think that Eddie Howe, on the basis of the second half capitulation, do you think he's going to be loyal to his back four, or do you think he's going to change things up and say, look, something badly wrong went here, and I'm not convinced that these guys are going to do it based on that second half performance? I need to change something here. Do you think he's going to be willing to change something?
I think it's a tough thing, and this is why obviously Eddie Howe gets paid the big bucks, because he's got a big decision to make. Because if he goes and changes Manquillo, brings him out and puts Emil Kraft in, what's that going to do to Manquillo's confidence? What happens if something happens to Kraft and he has to come back in knowing that he was dropped because of his performance? You know, he's got to think of that over the next 8 games, because he's got to try and keep confidence as high as possible. But equally, the one thing I'll say, and I don't know your thoughts on this, is actually if he does drop Manquillo's argument could be, well, why didn't you drop Shaw? Burn.
Yeah, it could create some dissent. Create some dissent in the camp. So what he might do, could be good management on his behalf, is he could just say, right, I'm going to look at that in isolation. That was a one-off, that capitulation. It happened. There were a number of things that were contributory factors, such as, you know, the Joe Linton before half time and the the little bits of the ruckus there, you know, in the dressing room, that contributed to it. These guys have been solid for me up to that point. I'm going to stick with the back four as it is, you know, and maybe just, as you say, put that, if he was going to change anything, maybe just bring Kraft back in, but he could just, as you say, just keep it as the back four, as you have it.
Yeah, and it could be that if someone like Manquillo has another bad performance, he can say, right, okay, you're out the team. I'll bring Kraft in because you've already proven that you've had two poor performances in a row, and we can't afford that at Newcastle. So he might make that decision. So that would be an interesting one. But I think he will stick. I think he'll give them an opportunity to prove some of the doubters wrong and prove that it was just an off day. In my opinion, but the interesting one again here, and I think most Newcastle fans will agree that Bruno has to start. And I mentioned it on a previous show. It might have even been Monday on the rant show that I said there's going to come a point where Eddie Howe has to decide whether it's Bruno or Shelvey, not both. And I think this could be it. And Bruno, if you've seen in the last hour or so, has tweeted out and said basically that he hopes his first start at St. James's Park is tomorrow, and he's hopeful for that. And he's kind of maybe he's either been told that he's starting or he's certainly planting the seed. Who knows? We'll find out tomorrow. But he certainly, quite rightly deserves to be playing, because even when he came on as sub, when the game was already gone against Tottenham, he was still our best player. He always wanted the ball. He was trying to make things happen. Tottenham were kicking him, were pulling him, really trying to get the ball off him. They just could not get the ball off him. A little bit like Ruben Neves for Wolves, Davey. He just seems to be so eloquent on the ball, and he just keeps things ticking. And he just got such a lovely technique about him. He's just you always when you recognize an elite footballer, a top level footballer. Ruben Neves is in that category. Moutinho, when he first signed for you, was in a similar mold. I know he's obviously, his age is kicking on, but still technique and technically still very, very good. Bruno is in that bracket. There's no doubt about it. Joe Linton needs a better performance. He hadn't played well against Tottenham. He looked tired. Hopefully his all guns blazing. And then obviously the question mark about Alan Saint-Maximin. This will be interesting down this side. I don't know what Trincao's like defensively. I know Johnny's not a bad defender, but Alan Saint-Maximin and Bruno have got this little connection that whenever Bruno gets on the ball, one of the first thoughts is where Saint-Maximin, can I get him on the ball? They've already struck up this partnership. And actually, even though Bruno didn't start the game, Shelvey was very, very similar. That if you notice in the first 15, 20 minutes of the first half against Tottenham, whenever Shelvey got the ball or Joe Willock in that position, their first thought was, can I get Maxi on the ball? And Maxi had probably 4 or 5 one-on-ones with in a very similar setup with it was Christian Romero down here, but also I think it was Emerson Royale that played in Johnny's position. And they tried to double up on him. And sometimes it worked, but sometimes he was getting in on the outside and getting himself into the box. But that will be an interesting battle there between those two. Need a little bit more productivity from Ryan Fraser. He was out wide, working hard, back and forth, but lack of delivery into the box. We need him to be producing the goods. And this will be a battle here. This is where there'll be a bit of a battle between these two, because Wood likes to occupy the centre-back. I think there were times in the game on Sunday where he did get the better of Eric Dyer, but there were times where he wasn't quite at the races. He wasn't quite himself. And obviously just coming back from New Zealand on international break could have been a reason for that. But Conor Coady is a very good centre-back, and I think that'll be a real good battle aerially. And, Wood likes to play that target man. So, can Bruno get that ball into his feet? Can Longstaff make that ball stick? Can Joe Linton get in and around him? Equally, can Longstaff and Joe Linton make those runs in and behind? If he gets the flick-ons, can they cause problems to the likes of Willy Bolly and Kilman? So that'll be where the sort of the situation kind of opens up for the home team. But from a tactical point of view, Dave, from the away team's point of view, what is your what is your style like? How do you kind of set up and like to play? Is it very much counter attack, or is it a different style in the Bruno Lage now?
It's a little bit different. There are still some instances where we do counter attack. I think the first 10-15 minutes, you might see Newcastle have quite a bit of the ball. I think we just take that little bit of time to suss out exactly how Newcastle are going to play and who they're going to try and get on the ball the most. Like you said, St Maximin is an obvious one. But Chris Wood has always had decent form against Wolves, always seems to cause us a lot of problems. I think as good as Coady is, he isn't a big towering centre-back. So when you've got players like Chris Wood and you pin them on him, I think that he can make life a little bit more difficult for Coady. But yeah, just looking at that team, we're going to want to try and get in those spaces in behind, Pedence and Trincao. Although they like to get the ball out wide, they are inside forwards as well. They'll cut inside and try and find those gaps in between Manquillo and Shaw and Burn and Target probably. So yeah, I will be interested to see, that they like to rotate. They like to make, make things difficult for those back lines. But obviously Matinho and Dendoncker. Matinho's the main one really. They're going to give him the ball to try and rotate, recycle things. But I wouldn't be surprised maybe like someone like Dendoncker, pin him on St Maximin. But I think, Trincao and Johnny, they're going to have a, quite a difficult, a busy game trying to keep St Maximin quiet. But we did it with the likes of Coutinho. Coutinho started on the left for Villa and he didn't get a sniff on Saturday. So I'm hoping it could be the same again with St Maximin.
Definitely. From your midfield pairing, so you got Dendoncker and you got Matinho. Which one of them tends to get themselves forward? Is it Dendoncker because of his aerial ability?
It's normally Dendoncker. I'm not saying Matinho doesn't, but he doesn't you don't always see him in the box. When we got the ball up wide, he's not running into the area. He's someone that tends to stay back a little bit more. But
is he more deep
like
lying,
you said,
on the ball?
Exactly that. Yeah. So like you said, Dendoncker with his physicality and his aerial ability is the one that seems to break forward a little bit more. And he actually had one or two half decent chances against Villa on Saturday as well.
Definitely. Interesting. Silva. Obviously, we know what we get from Raul Jimenez because he's plays. He's probably more mobile than Chris Wood, but he plays a similar role in that he is a little bit of a target man. He's good in the air. He can hold up the ball. He likes to stretch defenders, pull them out wide in various different positions. But what is Silva? What's Silva's style of play?
Oh, I would say he's very much a poacher. I think if he can get the ball in and around the area, 9 times out of 10, he's going to at least get it on target. But I think what Wolves fans wanted to see from him is a little bit more of an all-round game, similar to what we have seen from him. And there's somebody that you can give the ball to and hold the ball up and bring other players into play. And he 1,000,000% did that against Villa. He was fantastic, created 2 chances, one where he caught, outran Tyrone Mings and created a one-on-one for himself, which I think he should have done a little bit better on. But in the second half, wins the ball and then has a really decent curling effort towards goal from range. So he's a player that's lively. He's a player that's confident. He's looking sharp. He's bulked out a lot in the last year or so. This is his second full season in the Premier League. Still such a young player and already played over 50 times in the Premier League. He's just got to start adding more goals. And in the back of a lot of Wolves fans' minds, we're thinking, if he can get one against Newcastle, I think he's going to make it very difficult for Raul Jimenez to come back into the team, and hopefully it just helps him kick on and start scoring more goals.
Definitely. Tom Dixon's put on there again. I think Lascelles will play tomorrow. That'll be interesting because it'll be interesting, Tom, from that point of view, who he brings out. Is it going to be Burn or Shaw? Or, in fact, from that point of view, is he going to go potentially with a back 3? Will he bring in a back 3 and have Lascelles in there? That we kind of finished like that in the game against Tottenham. It didn't look great, if I'm honest with you. And we kind of lose a midfielder. Maybe Longstaff comes out and we go with the 2, a little bit like what we did against Chelsea. We had a 2 in midfield with the kind of 3 forward guys up top. Fraser, it might be Fraser, Wood and St Maxi. So it could well be like that. Personally, I don't think it will. Personally, I think he'll stick to his formation because it's the formation that Eddie Howe likes. He likes that formation, and I think that'll be the one that he goes for. So I think that's how it stays. But it's interesting. It's interesting that people are bringing out their opinions. Just one of the last things from a tactical point of view, Dave, is that our midfielders, particularly these 2 here, whoever plays in these positions are instructed to give the high press. To be really sort of pressing forward and, put pressure on the centre midfielders who have got the ball here and here, but also put pressure, if you are playing a back three, on these guys that have got the ball, with Wood kind of staying close into the middle. What are these guys like on the ball? Bolly, Kilman, I know Cody's pretty decent, but what are they like on the ball? Are they able to deal with the press, or is that maybe a weakness in the team?
Well, they're good ball playing defenders. I'd say they are comfortable on the ball, and under Bruno Lage especially, instead of just hoofing it up the pitch, we have tried to start playing the ball out of defence. There've been one or two instances where we have struggled against a high press. I think Leeds caused us a couple of issues.
Yeah.
Villa tried it on Saturday, and I thought we played really well out of it. And like you said, as soon as you got Longstaff trying to press Bruno, well, maybe say Bruno's sitting a bit deeper, but as soon as you got St. Maximin, Longstaff, Joe Linton, Fraser trying to press, balls can play out of defence, like I said. Obviously, we've got a load of space to play in. And I think that was one of the things that interested me the most about the Villa game. It just seemed so open. We conceded one or two big chances, but at the same time, with the way we were playing and the way that Villa were committing men forward and we were playing out of it, we created a lot of good opportunities ourselves. So I think if Newcastle were to press quite high and playing a 4-3-3, similar sort of way to how Villa started, it could be a game like that where it is quite open and both teams are going to get opportunities to score.
Yeah, definitely. It'll be interesting to see how that all comes about. But yeah, that's it. I would say from the tactics board, we'll bring that back next week. But always good to look from a different perspective and look at, obviously, yourself, Dave, and the way in which Wolves set up. We don't get to see Wolves in the sort of detail that you do. So it's nice to see the way in which you guys play. And obviously, from our perspective, we've talked a little bit about how we see Newcastle set up and how they kind of play in game. So just one or two things to think about from that point of view. But just before we get to predictions and wrapping up the show, just a few questions in the chat for you, some quick fires. But first, just before that, Unlock the Funk, massive thanks to you for becoming a member of Loaded. Welcome to the family. Really, really do appreciate it. And so do the other boys as well. Martin's come in. Evening, boys. Great bonus with a couple of Wolves lads out. We need to be on our game. Yes, we do. We definitely desperately need that win. That's for sure. Let's have first question. Dave, which is the club you love to hate in the Premier League? Is it Villa? Interesting question there from Geordie Toon for Life.
Yeah, the Villa one's interesting because whenever you ask Villa fans, they always say it's not a derby, or they don't say it's a rivalry, but they get a very wound up when we beat them. So I think that secretly they know it is. Villa's probably the most obvious one. I think Leeds fans this season especially have sort of the way they've rubbed us the wrong way is, left a bit of a bitter taste. But Arsenal as well. Arsenal fans have been really strange this year with us. So it's probably one of those three, I'd say.
They're worried. That's why.
That's just what I was about to say. It's interesting because obviously you're taking that place. I mean, last year was a bit of a recap for Wolves after two strong seasons, and they've pushed on even better. They've really pushed forward and moved a few steps forward. Not the likes of Arsenal don't like it.
Exactly that.
That's it. Teams always get a little bit tetchy when you start moving up the table and causing them some problems. When you're doing well, but you're not in and around them, they're a great side. Love to watch them. But
exactly
then
great fans, love the fans.
Yeah, they're my second team. Yeah,
yeah, that's it. There you go. Like, we're not even anywhere chasing up there, and we got that stick from October the 7th when we got the takeover because they knew what the potential was.
There's a bit of a threat there. All
pre the 7th, it was like, the lovely people up there in the northeast.
That was it. But then the takeover happened, and it's like, I want them relegated. I can't wait for them to go down and
get it in the bottom of the block. They haven't won in 10. Get in.
There you go. It all changes very, very quickly. That is for sure. Gary's just put, evening P, happy birthday to Loaded Mag. Thank you very much. And Leicester getting ever closer. Yes, obviously being Leicester born and bred. Don't support them though, far from it. The Leicester game's next Sunday. So really looking forward to taking the family up to Newcastle for a few days and going to the game. I'm taking my daughter to her first ever Newcastle United game. So she doesn't actually know she's going to the game. She knows she's going to Newcastle, but when I give her the ticket, she's going to be absolutely buzzing. So I'm looking forward to that. So yeah, Gary, hopefully get to bump into you at the Dog and Parrot before the game. Looking forward to that. And Terry Davidson says Newcastle got to go for it in the next 3 home games starting tomorrow. You are not wrong there. That is for sure. Martin said, love the away days to Wolves. Steve Bull was an awesome striker back in the day. Yeah, we talked about him earlier. Obviously, Dave, you said you were a little bit too young to see him play.
Yeah.
But I was probably just really getting into football around the early 90s, and I did see him play. And yeah, he was a top striker.
The one game they talk about a lot with Steve Bull, I think it was, we played Newcastle away on a New Year's Day, I think, and Wolves flew up to the game, and Steve Bull got absolutely smashed on the New Year's Eve. They were drinking like until the early hours, and then he went to Newcastle and scored 4 goals. And they were just saying that's how good he was. Like even with a beer, he was that good.
And astonishingly as well, in England international, Wales been in the 3rd tier of English football.
Exactly. Yeah.
You know, it's never been done before and never been done against, but under the great Sir Bobby Robson, he got an England cap or 2.
Wow, brilliant stuff. Only Sir Bobby Robson can give an opportunity to a player in the 3rd tier, and yeah, we don't see enough of that nowadays. I think it might have even been Dave Nugent the last time we had a player in the 2nd tier that got an England cap. Might have been Dave Nugent, could be wrong, but that's the one that I certainly remember from that point of view. So that was from Mark. Question for Dave. Dave the Wolves fan is referred to as of the greedy 6. Which of them does he dislike the most? I think you've touched on this a little bit already off the back of this season, but which of the greedy 6, as Gary refers to, do you dislike the most?
Probably, like I said, I've mentioned the Arsenal fans. I think Liverpool fans are a similar sort of vein, to be fair, as well. So I don't know. I've not really got an issue with many people or many fans, to be fair. But I'd say out of if we're going sort of traditional top 6, I would say Arsenal based on their fans from this season, and then probably closely followed by Liverpool. But like I said, I don't tend to have an issue with many of them.
What are your thoughts on United?
See, I've got my family from Malta, and in Malta they love Manchester United, so I can't really have much of an issue with that. They've got a huge fan base over there, so I'd hate to admit it, but probably on paper, United should be my 2nd team. They should be. Yeah. Well, that obviously, I don't really follow anything,
the Pete's 2nd team. He loves Cristiano Ronaldo.
Yeah, I'm a big Ronaldo fan as well, to be fair.
Honestly, it's not that Man United are my 2nd team. Far from it. I've just followed wherever he's been. I've just followed his career. So when he was at Man United the first time, he went to Real Madrid. I was watching every Real Madrid game, not to see Real Madrid, but just to see Cristiano Ronaldo in the way he played.
I'm a big fan as well.
Then he went to Juventus, did the same, and now he's back to Man United. Whenever he plays, I watch them. When he's not playing, I don't. It's just that. Like, he's just for me, Cristiano Ronaldo. Like, he's hated because of his ego and all the rest of it, so people say, but that's what makes him the player that he is. He wasn't naturally gifted like a Lionel Messi. He's worked hard for everything that he's earned in his career. He's still now training hard every day at 37, 38 years old. Like, he has committed his life to football. And there's no better role model than that. You take it out of football, you put it in any job, in any walk of life. If you work hard and you give a maximum of 100% in anything that you do, you can be successful. And he epitomizes that. The Messi Ronaldo thing goes out the window for me because his qualities and his characteristics outweigh anything else because of how that he's worked to achieve what he has, and he's done it in so many different leagues, which for me is key.
Yeah.
But yeah, he's shown great determination, great quality. Not to mention the stuff that he does for charities and the money that he gives for charities and supports that he gives elsewhere. His own money, not through anything else. He's just very much, a role model for me and an icon. Yeah, definitely love the guy. That's for sure. Sorry, Si. That's twice now I've clicked the leave button by accident. I'm having a shocker from that point of view. But yeah, we've got a few more questions. Yeah, as Richie said, I'll come back to that point. It's interesting to hear that Dave thinks that Coady couldn't play in the back four. We all said that regarding Shaw, but he's been exceptional this year. And yeah, we touched on that earlier. And yeah, this was an interesting one. Geordie Mick said, Rich, I think he could play easily play in the four. The kid's got talent, referring to Coady. And Rich is already talking about Coady playing for Newcastle because he said, we know how good Howe and Tyndall have been working with the defence, so it wouldn't surprise me if they could do the same with Coady. Signing Coady would also allow his flexibility. So, sorry, Dave. From Rich's point of view, he's already going to be wearing black and white. Next season. But yeah, interesting one. Jordy Fly says, "Do the crowd at Wolves sing songs what to you?"
No, we sing obviously the Si Senor song. But that's probably as foreign as it gets, to be honest.
Si Senora.
But other than that, no, there's nothing else. Not yet, anyway.
Nah, not yet. Possibly soon. Who knows? Simon, friend of the channel and fantastic sponsor to Loaded HQ. Dave, what positions do Wolves need to strengthen in the summer to keep progressing? Great question.
I think what it is, Simon, is probably a little bit more depth in the squad. Like I said earlier, I think our squad is probably the strongest it's been for a long time. Goals is one thing. I think if we don't get into Europe, I think, this summer it could be an interesting one in regards to Raul Jimenez. He's getting to an age now. I think he'll be 32 this year. It's an age now where I think he's only got a couple of years left on his deal as well. So I think a striker, regardless of that situation, I think another striker, probably an elite centre back as well, is what Wolves will want to have, and just tidying up certain areas. I think Adama Traore will go, and probably just bulking out the depth of the squad. We've only got 3 central midfielders. We've got Moutinho, Dendoncker, Neves. Neves has just got injured. Fortunately, Moutinho and Dendoncker are okay at the moment, but for argument's sake, if one of them gets suspended or gets injured tomorrow, we're in a little bit of trouble. So I think it's just bolstering certain areas of the pitch. But I think Newcastle will find out in the next year or two. It's very hard to sign top players when you can't guarantee them every single minute of the pitch, on the pitch. And I think that's the issue we've had with Jimenez. Any striker we looked at, they know they're going to be second fiddle to Jimenez. And you can't sign a top striker that knows he's going to be on the bench and only play a quarter of the minutes that he wants to be playing. So I think that's the thing. You've got to try and, yes, we want to strengthen, but at the same time, you've got to find players that are happy to either be a rotation or happy to be there and try and fight for their place.
Yeah, I think that's a great point, and I'm really glad you brought that point up, Dave, because there's some of the things that I think over the next few years is what we're going to be experiencing with certain players in certain positions. We're looking at, I think we've been linked with certain like right backs, for example, but we've got Kieran Trippier, who were just signed from Atletico Madrid, and it's that's not going to happen anytime soon. We're looking at midfielders, and okay, we're looking at midfielders, but they've got to be midfielders that are going to play with the likes of Bruno, not replace them. The striker situation, and I think you might well agree with this, Keith, as well. Our striker situation is very interesting. We've just spent 25 million on Chris Wood from Burnley. We've got Callum Wilson, who's fighting to potentially be in the conversation with regards to playing for England at Qatar, and then we're looking at getting an elite striker, someone that we can guarantee on every week because Wilson's injuries. And it's a case of, it's a really difficult situation because we're then either going to sign a striker that's going to be top level, that's going to be guaranteed first team football, and a difficult conversation is going to then be had with Wilson and £25 million signing in January, Chris Wood, or we're going to sign a striker that's probably going to be on the same level and then pretty much going to be like sort of battening it out. And it's going to be chopping and changing every week. It's going to be a really interesting situation.
The two areas, I totally agree with you, Pete. The two areas, it's interesting at the minute. We've got like a good I was going to say Portuguese, but it's Brazilian dynamic there in the midfield now with obviously Guimarães and the improving Joe Linton, and it's getting players to complement that. And I know I was pleased with Howe's statement earlier today about ASM because I do think at times he has been getting treated unfairly. He has been improved. His stats still aren't the best, but it is going in the right direction. And Guimarães does look up to, and there is that compliment there between him and the Guimarães, and they're working well together. The two areas of strength for me that Newcastle need to strengthen, I think could strengthen the goalkeepers department because, although Dubravka's played really well over the years, he has had one or two bad injuries, and I'm just not confident if he's out. Basically, so I would like a strengthening in the goalkeeper department. The strikers, I understand the points you were making there, Pete, about the strikers, about Callum Wilson coming back. I love the guy, but he's, I think he's been playing really well, but you just kind of guarantee him to stay fit. A couple of games you're worried about him, and I don't think we can rely on him. It's 2 years now. Wood, he might get the confidence, but at the minute he's not putting the ball in the back of the net, which is what we wanted him to do. And Dwight Gale, he's not been the same since he came back from West Brom, and he's just been a body basically there. And he needs to. So I want to see a baller or somebody, Pete. I want to really, we mightn't be able. We're not going to talk big money here, but I'd just like to see a surprise. In the summer and just get a good striker or two in, just because it's been so long. I mean, you're probably talking. So how long has it been, Pete, since we've had two good strikers at the club?
Yeah,
I will going back to CCN Bar back in 2012 here.
I would say that definitely. I think you made a great point there. Absolutely great point. Last question here before we wrap up. In fact, I tell you what, we'll leave that question because I think it's already been answered. I think it was about Adama Traore. But look, Dave, massive thanks. I know you've got a show that you're about to start any second. And
no, that's right.
You had your show. So massive thanks for you joining us. Just before you go, let's get quick predictions. So what do you think it's going to be by 10 o'clock tomorrow night, result-wise?
My head is saying a 1-1 draw, but my heart says a 2-1 Wolves win. So yeah, but like we've said, it's going to be a close game. I think if a team is going to win, it'll probably be only a goal either way. So yeah, but again, big game for both sides for different reasons.
Definitely. Yeah, and I think it'll be another close one myself. Keith, really quickly, your prediction for tomorrow night?
Me head, and I hope I'm wrong here. My head is sort of saying a 2-1 or a 3-1 to Wolves, but I'm wanting and I'm hoping that it's going to be a 1-1. I'm hoping the form in this bizarre Wolves Newcastle derby continues, and I'm hoping another 1-1 as the stats always seem to head to. So please, God, let's just get a point and end this run of unfortunate series of defeats, and let's just get a point on the board, get it closer to mathematical safety, and let's get a couple of wins on the board in the next couple of games before we get the nightmare 4 games to end the season.
Yeah, look, I'm going to go for a 2-1 win. I think it's going to be a tight game, just like Dave said, just like yourself, Keith. But I think we desperately need the win. We're at St James's Park, so I think that can always give a team an edge, give us the edge in this situation. So I'm hoping for a 2-1 win, which will take us one big step to safety. That is
if we get a scruffy 1-0 win, I'll be ecstatic tomorrow night.
Definitely. Any type of win, it doesn't really matter. But Dave, I'm going to let you go just before I do the sponsor, just because I know you've got a show. Massive thanks for you to joining us. Best of luck for the rest of the season after tomorrow night, of course. And look, hopefully we're in the league next season, so we can do more of these away days and we can catch up and talk about us both fighting for Europe maybe next season. Who knows?
No, thank you for having me. I think you guys are going to be all right. You've hit a good run of form just before the last few games, so you should be sound. And yeah, fingers crossed I'll see you next season anyway.
Top man. You take care, Dave. I'll let you go.
Cheers, guys.
See you soon.
Cheers.
Brilliant to have Dave on. Really top guy. And glad to get the predictions in just before he went. But just before I go, as has already been said quite rightly from Tom Dixon in the chat, hit the like button and subscribe to the show. Still chasing that 3,000 subscribers. Come and join the movement, the loaded movement. We're looking to that 3,000 subscribers. We're making those steps every day moving forward. It's not the be all and end all, but it would be nice to get to that 3K to show the progression that we've made. And obviously we will always continue regardless of that, the great content that Loaded HQ put on. So if you want to subscribe and become a member, we had a new member tonight. Massive welcome and welcome to the Loaded family. And yeah, you just click the blue button, the join button, $1.99 a month. And you'll be part of the fantastic special wheel that was out last night in force, giving prizes left, right, and centre, and rightly so as well. And yeah, our fantastic sponsors, Bronwyn with Black and White Army, fantastic gear as you can see here, and we've got that special 1881 ready to launch very soon, and Bronwyn will be joining us to do that. Massive thanks to Shy Burns, fantastic sponsors as always. Check out their gear, massive support. Simon in the chat, as always, a huge support of the channel and the boys, and we really appreciate everything that he has done for us so far, and that partnership will continue to blossom in the weeks and months to come. And as well, pins and prints, some fantastic pins and prints on here. I've just put a couple on here. The Maverick that is Hatton Ben Arthur, that looks fantastic. Very special goal. That one that he scored. The new leader in the squad, Kieran Trippier. I think that was the goal against Everton. His celebration.
Favorite moment of the season so far, Pete. That one.
Definitely that famous celebration when he whips the ball in around the wall and around Jordan Pickford, which is always a good feeling, and he celebrates in the corner near the Gallagate. And also we've got the obviously the old kit merges, the old school kit merges, which are fantastic and brilliant to see, and many more as well on the way. Lots and lots of different types of merges you can do with your prints. So please continue to support, get yourself involved, and we will keep going. Massive thanks to everyone in the chat. Nice of you to join us. Daz, better late than never. But yeah, thank you to Simon, absolute legend. And yeah, definitely very interesting stats from Keith tonight, ones to keep an eye out for. Really good to see the likes of Geordie Mick and Geordie Team for Life and Mike and Brew and El Stapleton. If you haven't become a subscriber or a member, you know what to do. Come and join us. Kamal, I'll keep going through. Tom Dixon, not a member. Come on, man, you know what to do. A fantastic supporter of the channel. Gary, Paul, Adam, as always, absolute legends. Lisa, who came on a little bit earlier, great to see Lisa, and see her comments in the chat. Ashley, and a new regular to the channel, came on earlier. New regular, great to have Ashley on there as well. And many more. So thank you to everyone in the chat. Massive thanks for Keith joining us tonight. Fantastic, interesting stats. I'm sure you'll be back for more, because we will be back on Wednesday next week for the Leicester preview, and we will have our guest who we will put out, or maybe not just one guest, maybe more than one. We will see. Come and preview the Leicester game, and that should be interesting as well. Hopefully, we're talking about this being on 34 points rather than 31, but we'll see how that goes. But until then, you guys take care. Have a fantastic evening, and as always, we do love playing away. You guys take care. Have a great evening. See you soon.
Evening, everyone. Bye.